India, good evening. This is Times Now. Look at these pictures coming to you from Bharat Mandapam in the heart of the national capital, Delhi. World leaders, one by one, arriving for the presidential dinner. Prime Minister Modi also there to welcome them. We have with us Professor Nalapat, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Sushant Sareen. Professor Nalapat, when people say that peace comes through strength, how do you see that in context of what Prime Minister Modi said today by saying this is not an era of war?
Well, look, if one were to try and connect the dots, let me tell you what dots I will be looking at and what I'd like to connect, and possibly when the history of this conference is written later, because frankly, what has happened is historic. Since 2014, there has really not been this kind of unanimity between Russia and the Western powers, especially the United States. 2014, that's many, many years ago. In my view, first of all, you have this very close relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Joe Biden. I believe that the Prime Minister would have talked to President Biden about the statement, about the need to have a united front, about the need for North and South to work together, and for all the different continents to work together. In my view, President Biden would then have been in touch with his European friends and his other friends in the G7. Of course, Japan and South Korea are very close to India. After that, in my view, and again, this is the dots will only be known after maybe possibly years. In my view, I do believe that there would have been contact between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, and basically nudging President Putin not to stand in the way of a unanimous acceptance of the Delhi Declaration. In which case, President Putin would have contacted President Xi. And remember, I was there, I think, I'm not sure, not on this channel, but when Qin Gang's resignation was announced, his disappearance as the foreign minister, I said this indicates becoming weaker. And Wang Yi's appointment, Wang Yi is a party man. And it is in this context of Xi becoming weaker, because Xi would have liked to sabotage this summit. He would not have liked this kind of an agreed statement. But given the fact that we're looking at an era where Xi is weaker since Qin Gang disappeared, who was Xi's man, and was replaced by the CCP man, Wang Yi. I do believe that collective leadership said, why make an enemy out of India more than what we have already made? And why annoy President Putin, who has told us, and look, that he would like to go along with Prime Minister Modi. And I think that's how this unanimity was secured at the top. Frankly, this is absolutely historic in a geopolitical context, and I believe it happened at the top. Later on, when the dots are connected, I may be proved right that first to the PM Modi to Biden, Biden to the G7 and to the EU, then PM Modi to Putin, Putin to weaken Xi Jinping, and that's how all these different countries. Remember, the G20 was a fractured organization, G18 and G2. And today, we are seeing the G20 back. How unique is that? How rare is that in these times? So in my view, this is what happened. And I think full credit to the fact that Prime Minister Modi has the best of relations with President Biden and President Putin,
right,
neither of whom have a very good relationship with each other, as we all know.
Okay, Professor Nalapat, stay on with us. Reshape now joining us from inside the Bharat Mandapam. Reshape, the stage is set for diplomatic dinner hosted by President Murmu.
Well, definitely, yes, the stage is set and the leaders have started arriving. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is personally introducing all the visiting dignitaries to the President of India, President Draupadi Murmu. And, this is one of the largest grouping coming together for an informal dinner. We have seen a diplomatic coup earlier today where India, even after all the apprehensions that there cannot be a joint declaration, India got joint declaration released, adopted and agreed upon. 83 paras, all 83 paras agreed upon. So that was a diplomatic coup that has happened earlier today, and now a celebration of the victory of India's G20 presidency. When India took over, G20 was a fractured grouping. The world press nullified India's presidency, and now today, 10 months later, we have the joint statement coming out, agreed upon by others.
And Bharat's heritage on complete display. The Bharat Mandapam there from Konark Wheel to this backdrop on your screen. We're taking a short break. Call our guest and Reshape stays on. Stay with Times Now, viewers. This is Times Now, live pictures from the Bharat Mandapam. World leaders arriving for the dinner being hosted by President Murmu. Professor Nalapat, Sushant Sareen, Abhijit Iyer Mitra in the studio here. Sushant Sareen, a Chinese think tank says that India is sabotaging G20 for its own agenda. This is the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations.
Pranesh, do you seriously expect me to answer that question with seriousness, or, with all the contempt and, amusement that I can summon? I don't see how they are saying that we are trying to sabotage G20. In fact, I think we are taking G20 forward. We are taking it from strength to strength. Now, the Chinese have shot themselves in the foot by, this petulance that their emperor has shown. I don't know how long that emperor is going to stay emperor. I can't speculate that.
Emperor
I'm not an expert on. Well, I don't know how long the life is going to be then, because there is a tendency in China to cut short the life of inconvenient emperors. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on Chinese politics, but quite clearly, I think they've shot themselves in the foot. We had a very fruitful relationship going forward with the Chinese. And in fact, I still believe that with China, we can have a very good relationship because culturally, there are so many similarities between India and China that it's amazing. It's crazy. And yet you see this nonsensical Middle Kingdom syndrome, this sense of superiority which the Chinese have, even though, much of their culture has been imported from India traditionally. And yet they think that, they are some kind of God's gift to mankind. We understand the Chinese accomplishments, and they have undeniably accomplished a lot over the last 40, 50 years. Certainly. And I think we would be stupid to not recognize that. But for the Chinese to act as though the whole world owes them a living and the whole world must bow before them, that's not going to happen. In fact, there were Chinese leaders before Xi Jinping who were great visionaries, who understood how to move forward in the world and take everybody along with them. In fact, to the extent that the world was sleepwalking while China was dominating or had started to dominate. Thankfully, and this is where I appreciate Xi Jinping, and I agree with what my friend Abhijit says, that he's India's greatest strategic asset, that he woke up the world to what China can be if, people don't wake up. But if you look at what Deng Xiaoping did, if you look at what Jiang Zemin or Hu Jintao did, the way they interacted with the rest of the world, they had their own position, but, it was a much more cooperative relationship with the rest of the world, even though even at that point of time, the Chinese would protect their own markets. They had a kind of a somewhat predatory approach to international trade. But despite all of that, China was something which, or a country with which people were willing to engage. I don't think you can say that about China anymore. The Chinese have made inroads, so decoupling or de-risking or whatever term you want to use will take time. But the fact that everybody has now realized that, this can't continue is something that the Chinese have brought upon themselves.
Right.
For the Chinese to now turn around and say that India is sabotaging G20, frankly, it just tells you the caliber of people in Chinese think tanks and how stupid they can be.
It's also a case of sour grapes for them. But Reshape is back with us. Reshape, food has become so central to diplomacy that there is this whole new term which is gastro-diplomacy. And I believe you have the menu also. India has left nothing to chance as far as using food to woo world leaders, that is concerned.
Well, definitely India is going world not only diplomatically but through gastro-diplomacy as well. The way we are looking at diplomacy now at the dinner that is happening. The food, vegetarian food being served, food by Shri Ann. That's what the Prime Minister says, that the millet foods are being served. The kheer for millet, there are different assortments from millet that is being served at Bharat Mandapam right now. And the food diplomacy that we talk about, that is something that is happening right now at Bharat Mandapam. In a bit and showcase that what happened. Prime Minister Modi introducing all the visiting dignitaries to President Draupadi Murmu.
Okay, taking a quick break. Lots more lined up on the other side. Stay with Times Now. Welcome back. World leaders getting ready to have dinner with President Murmu. This is the dinner hosted by President Murmu at the Bharat Mandapam. Pictures coming, beaming live on Times Now. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, and I was just talking about the menu. Abhijit, what do you think of it? Isn't it too austere a menu? I mean, just, 5 things on the menu?
Yaar, if this was the menu offered to me, I would stage a walkout. I am honest to you. This is not a menu that I would have tolerated, boss. Let me read it out to you. Starter: foxtail millet leaf crisps topped with a yogurt sphere and spiced chutney. Okay, this is fine. This is edible. But you tell me, what is this main course? Jackfruit galette served with glazed forest mushrooms, little millet crisps, curry leaf tossed Kerala red rice with Mumbai pav and bakar khani. Yaar, how do you eat this? What do you eat this with?
You eat this with Mumbai pav. If you go down on the menu, Mumbai pav, onion seed flavored soft bun, then you have
this won't be enough for one morsel. This is all carb rich and protein poor. And then finally this dessert. No, there should be at least 7-8 courses. These are all heads of state. 7-8 courses to hone hi chahiye. 3 course mein bhaga diya unko. Good reason, because if you're putting millets in everything, you want them to go back to the hotel and eat the good food at the hotel.
Millets make you feel full. I don't know what Professor Nalapat is thinking. He has a big smile on his face. But Sushant Sareen, quickly, your thoughts on the menu. And then Professor Nalapat, I'm coming to you.
No, Pranesh, I think it's good that you asked Abhijit, because I was laughing when I was hearing about the menu, and I was thinking of Abhijit and how he would have looked at it. Ideally, I would have actually asked him to describe all the dishes in detail, because he does a fabulous job of it. He can even make an ordinary thing like dal sound very exotic. So I don't know if he had anything to do with the description of the menu. But yeah, given how much of a glutton, I won't call him a gourmet, but given how much of a glutton this guy is, I'm not surprised that he is not particularly impressed by the menu.
But did you notice something? Not one of the visiting heads of state or government is obese. So they're clearly very used to eating this kind of food. Do you know for a fact there is not a single state event or dinner anywhere in the world where the food is considered good? The only exception is when the British Queen used to visit the Champs-Élysées, the French President's palace, and the French President used to visit Buckingham Palace. That was apparently the only time the chefs used to put in effort into the meal. Otherwise, uniformly, I know people who have attended some 6, I know different people, each of whom has attended at least 6-7 White House state dinners, not just for the Indian Prime Minister, and they've all complained on the food being absolutely grotesque.
But let's see the response tomorrow or whenever we see. We've saved our best for the last. Professor Nalapat, his take on the menu at Bharat Mandapam, that's coming up next. We are taking a short break. Welcome back, Professor Nalapat. From foreign policy to food, your thoughts on the menu?
Well, I'd like to say now I know what I should not give Abhijit the next time I have him over for lunch or dinner. But having said that, I'd like to point out that look, we are in Bharat, that is India. And this food, I mean, for example, Kerala red rice, absolutely yummy. Those who take it for the first time, I'm sure they'll be hooked onto it. Pav Bhaji. There's no better food than Pav Bhaji.
No, there is no
There's
bhaji.
no pav bhaji,
That's the worry. Professor Nalapat, there is only pav. There is no bhaji. At least it's not here.
You have to eat it with glazed mushrooms.
The other mushrooms can be good bhaji. Mushrooms are high protein. They're not carbs. They're good protein. Look, I would only like to say, let them be used to being in India and let them be used to taking the food that we in India take. Till now, I would say a lot of banquets in India, till recently, till a few years ago, they were basically Western food. You know, you had a soup, then eventually ended with a dessert, and you had an array of knives and forks on either side. Well, look, we are not in Luxembourg, we're not in Paris, we're not in London, we're not even in Washington, which is the melange of all this. We are in India, in the capital of India, and we are serving good Indian food. As for vegetarianism,
Professor Nalapat, what are you having for dinner tonight?
Even today.
You are in India. What are you having in dinner tonight? Popular
I'm
question.
having two wonderful masala dosha with excellent coconut chutney.
Okay.
Good masala dosha, two with coconut chutney.
See, why couldn't they serve that?
Okay, that's not on the menu. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Professor Nalapat, Sushant Sareen, I thank all of you for joining us. We're taking a short break. Padmaja Joshi joins you on the other side.